Hello again, Kevin Inouye here from Fight Designer LLC. I'm behind on some of my maintenance stuff. I thought I'd go ahead and show you a little bit about cleaning some blank guns. Because I still have a batch that I brought back from the Allegheny Alley Fight, as well as a batch that I just got back from a rental a while back from Cocaine Cowboys, I think it is. A theatrical adaptation of the movie that rented some of my blank firing props down in Florida. And I've been negligent in taking care of these, so I thought I'd share kind of how I do my quick and dirty one-off. Now here's the thing, I tend to do my better cleaning on when things are on the way out. I do think it's important to check things both on the way in and the way out. Here's the thing about cleaning your blank guns. It's a little different than cleaning a real gun. You don't have the same kind of lead and copper residue to worry about. There's some other reasons why it's, the powder's dirtier, but there's some other things that are a little less dirty about it. But here's the thing, it's just harder to take apart. They're not made to be as friendly for field stripping, nor is it as important because they're not going to last as long anyway. The things that'll wear out are going to wear out whether you clean them or not. It's things like the metal around the vent hole in a top vent blank gun or things like that. So what I want to show you here is kind of the quick and dirty job that I'll do. If we're doing a production run, this would be at the end of every night. When I've worked on shows and been using my own blank guns, I'll try and do a quick job on this every night. And then I check things in the morning, because for a blank gun, cleaning really does two things. One, it makes sure that the vent lane is clear and the pieces are not covered in grit, and that there's not obvious bits of gunk that can either jam the gun or become a projectile. And that's the hugely important one from a safety perspective, is there's nothing in the vent lane that's going to become a projectile the next time it's fired. And two, it's a safety check, because as you are doing these things, you are manipulating the prop, you're checking the prop, and you will notice things that you might not notice when you're on stage and your adrenaline is up and you're in the midst of a scene and you're not taking the time to really look and see and realize maybe like, hey, that screw's a little loose, or there's something a little wonky about the slide here, or whatever it is, right? It's a little quality time with your prop to kind of check it over and make sure that everything is ready for the next show or with the next gig. Right. I do think it's important to do it twice though, once on the way out and once on the way in. So as you are unpacking it, if you're working on this during the run of a show and you cleaned it last night, you don't need to clean it again. But do give it an examination, right? Give it a once over, make sure that nothing's happened overnight, that you didn't miss anything when you were in a hurry to get home, or just that somebody screwed with it or something, or it started to get rust over the week before you in that break of the Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday when you didn't have shows. So it's also just a chance to kind of give it a once over and make sure that everything seems good, right? Now, if I'm putting something in storage for a long time, yeah, there are times when I will do things like use a heavier oil than WD-40. WD-40 is not a good storage oil. It evaporates. It's great for cleaning and for loosening parts and things like that. It's not a good preservative oil. So for that, I'll use, I usually use rem oil. I've got some of that just because it's what I've got. But, any of those actual protective oils will work fine. Even silicone oil, which I use for the airsofts pretty exclusively, because it doesn't damage those rubber O-ring seals in the airsoft guns. But right now, we're going to start with the blank guns. Now, I mentioned with these, I don't usually field strip them, and that's partly because it's just not worth it. There's not a whole lot of benefit, but the potential danger is that if you take these things fully apart, especially the semi-automatics, there's a decent chance, 1 in 50 maybe, that even if you know what you're doing, you're going to send some spring flying across the room or some little screw's going to go missing, and that's going to cause reasons why it's not going to work next time. And I think that 1 in 50 chance that you're going to screw something up is probably at least as big as the chances of you preserving the life of the prop by doing a full field strip, clean down kind of thing. The real firearm, you have the option of, once you've made sure that it's completely unloaded and safe, of field stripping this sucker. And often this does require pulling the trigger, which is why you hear of more gun accidents happening during cleaning. But this gives you access to be able to scrub in at these rails here, get a toothbrush or something, clean those out, oil them a little bit. You can pop the barrel out, check out the barrel, clean down the barrel. And this is all great for keeping this thing running nicely. This is something I can't show at most firearms workshops because they're usually at schools where we're not allowed to bring real guns. And this is, these are designed to be done to have field strips be convenient. Hence why they're called a field strip. And it doesn't take a lot of special tools or anything. Field expedient, right? But the blank guns are made a little bit differently, and part of this is a safety precaution that is done so that they cannot be readily converted, so that you can't just swap out the barrel or something. One of the things that they will sometimes do with these, this is a little Beretta 85 I'm working with here. One of the ways that they almost always do this is they have the barrel as a part of the receiver. So this is not a separate unit, which means you can't just take it off and clean it. And then, there's usually some sort of a restriction, maybe at the end, maybe further back, or this is a top side vent. But if it were a front vent, there'd still be a little restrictor thing there. So between the two of those factors, it's just generally not worth it. Again, it's not that hard. Sometimes it's a little different than it is on a real one, and it can be a little tricky to figure out. But, if one of these springs goes missing or a little piece of plastic in there cracks, then all of a sudden you have a non-functional prop that used to be a functional prop. And honestly, I just don't think the lifespan of these things is long enough to make it worth the trade-off to be able to field strip these on a regular basis and clean them off every time. Is obnoxious sometimes. Let's see, how does this one work? So the guide rod is not wanting to cooperate. Which way does that need to go? Because this is going to go there to there. So that probably has to be lined up the right way. Looks like that way. I have not field stripped this particular model before, which makes an excellent demonstration for why it's a pain in the butt to figure these things out. But there we go. And now I need to push this in to be able to close that. And get this back in. And there we go. Now we're good to go. Not worth it. Whether you're talking a revolver where the cylinder here is obstructed, even if it's a front vent, there's still a little something. There's some styrofoam packing peanuts in there. There's still a little something in the barrel there that kind of protects it from having a real round go through. This one's a top vent, right? So that's our vent that we got to keep clean. So it's not worth it. You can't clean it properly anyway, even if you do a field strip. So there's really no reason to, as far as I'm concerned. So the main areas where I'm going to look at, one of it's obviously the chamber. So where the round vents and where the round is seated when it goes off. So I'll do a little squirt in each of these chambers. I love these ones with the little straws, especially when you get a longer barrel, like with the lever action rifles or things. It can help with that. And then a little bit just down into the barrel until it comes out the vent, or sometimes I'll go the other direction depending on the prop in question. So I'll give them some little squirts in there, and then just wipe it off. Right. And what I'm looking for here is it coming out dirty? If I see obvious powder residue, that tells me that it's dirty. If I keep wiping it off and do it again, and I'm still getting powder residue, it's still dirty. If it starts coming off clean, then it's good. Right. Now, one of the things I like about these top vents is it's really easy to see the vent, and you can kind of tell if anything's going wrong with it. With the revolvers, I'll sometimes go under the ejector here just to make sure that's clean. This area here where the firing pin comes out is another area that I like to clean, because sometimes you get a little spray back into that area. And the other one with these blank guns that I like to clean is underneath the hammer. So if you cock the hammer back, if it has an exposed hammer, obviously, the back end of the firing pin and the area in here, sometimes a little stuff will kind of spray back in there. So I'll like to give that a little bit of a rinse out. And usually what I'll do is I'll put a cloth down there, a paper towel or whatever, and I'll just kind of drop the hammer on that a couple of times. You can see there's a little dot that came off right where that firing pin is. And that's the kind of grime that I'm trying to get with a cleaning like this. Let's see, what else do they use? They used one of these MRX Chief Specials here. So this would be another top vent revolver. Vents out this little hole here. These have generally done pretty well for me over the years so far. And I have some extras that I haven't even, they're still brand new that I haven't even used yet. I bought out the remaining stock of them in black when I heard that Umarex USA was going to stop importing blank guns. Which is a decision that makes me very sad, because Umarex makes a lot of models that I really wish we could get in the US, but that are just not readily available here. You know, it's not just that they have the trademarks, it's also that they're better built. So for example, single action 1911s. The Brunis and the Kimars, I'm just not a fan. There's just too many problems with the little magazine release. Like, you got to push that in to put the magazine in, or else you can break that off really easily if you're not careful. And then I've had sear issues with a number of them. But Umarex makes a license, actually made two different licensed 1911s. There's a Colt 1911A1, which I've got a few of, and Smith & Wesson 1911 also, which I don't have any of. But, you know, can't get those in the States, and I really wish that we could, because it'd be nice to have that option. They make a number of licensed Walthers, not just the not just the P99, that is what you tend to find most people here having, because that was what you could get for a little while. But a bunch of the other Walthers, a lot of great firearms that you can get from Umarex in parts of Europe that you just can't get here, unfortunately. They really wanted a Mac 11. This was from Cocaine Cowboys. And blank firing, this is the closest that I have to a Mac 11 once you put the extended magazine on it. This is the Zeraki 925 machine pistol. You know, it's got basically the same shape as the Mac 10, Mac 11, which is sort of a great, almost ubiquitous machine pistol of the late 80s, early 90s. That and the Uzi were really the full auto compact design of choice for movies and firearms aficionados back in the day, before we got other options. So the magazines are also something that I try and clean with these. Like on semi-auto magazines, they're generally steel, which does mean that they can rust, and you do need to get a little bit of oil on them and keep them clean, just so that they don't get too messed up that way. I don't like to mess with the springs too much. You can take the base plate off and take the springs out. I usually don't worry about it unless it feels like it's kind of gritty, or I feel or hear something kind of like grinding when I push that down the follower, which I don't on these, so I'm not going to worry about it. But I do clean it out a little bit, because sometimes you get a little spray. This is, again, one of those, kind of like the Voltron Aussie Uzi replica. The Zoraki 925 is actually one of their other models, a sort of subcompact select fire pistol inside a plastic housing. So there is another pistol, a steel pistol here, with this synthetic housing built around it, and it's got this funky kind of like, almost like a charging handle on a AR-15 here in the back, and a little dust cover, much like the AR-15 as well. So again, you can take the plastic housings off of these, but I generally find it's not worth it, because I can still get at most of the things I want to clean without that. These particular ones are front venting, so I can, let's take the magazine out here and open up the chamber. I can squirt a little bit down here right into the chamber, and I can clean that out a little bit, and I'll see it come out front. Oh yeah, you can see that little circle of goop. So it's starting to drip out the front here, and I can kind of check that and see how it's doing. Now, a lot of these do come with bore brushes, because they have a little almost like a splitter thing inside there. You can't actually run the bore brush all the way down, unfortunately, but I'll still sometimes, you have to bend it a little bit, but I'll use it sometimes to clean out the chamber itself a little bit, if it feels like it's especially dirty. This one's, yeah, it's not too bad. But again, part of this is inspection as much as it is cleaning. This one, the muzzle part itself comes off, so there's a couple different options you can use. Of course, I just put oil on it, so now it's harder to do. There we go. So this one comes with a couple of different attachments. You can have one that's a little bit more flush. You can have the flare adapter that a lot of the European blank guns come with. You can help it shoot signal rounds or flares, and then this funky little wrench that helps you swap them out. I tend to like this particular attachment because it looks a little bit more like a decently sized muzzle. But I'm going to take that off, because that'll make that a little easier to clean. In case anything got in there. Yeah, not really. It's fine. Yeah, so if you look, there's a little splitter right at the end of the actual barrel, which is like back here, not at the end of it, because again, this is a smaller gun inside the plastic shell. So there's a little splitter right there that keeps you from actually putting a bore brush down it, unfortunately, or a bore snake. So you really can't clean these the way that you'd want to in a real gun. But you can still give it a little visual inspection. You can make sure that there's no crud in there. The fact that it's a straight line on the front vent makes it easier to check that. When it's a top vent, or I guess the worst situation would be like the Bruni lever actions, where it's a long barrel and then a top vent. You really can't see inside there. There's no good way to get a visual on that. So at least with these front vents, I can kind of peek down. I can get a light in there, and then I can kind of see down the barrel enough to make sure that it's not obstructed and it's going to be safe. So then once I assemble things together again, and I've wiped it all down, I'm also going to just cycle the action a few times and make sure that everything feels okay, that everything clicks like it should. I'm not too worried about dry firing these. I don't like dry firing my 22s, because of those it does damage it a little bit more, but these semi-automatics, 9mm or 8mm, I'm much less worried about those. I do like that the Zoraki 925s give you a decent case, much like the Ritays, the form-fitted foam case. Alright, so now I'm getting into some of the ones that I used in the Allegheny Alley Fight workshop. There were a couple of surprises on this. So actually the Ritays worked fine, as they have before. No problems with those, which is always good. Some things get better with time, like they break in after an initial period. Some things get worse with time, and you never exactly know what you're going to have until you've spent some quality time with it. I'll clean up the mag well here. Now, when you can get at the slide on these, I also like to get in here a little bit and just check it. These also don't have an exposed hammer, so I can't get at that the same way. But if you look in here, you can actually kind of see the back end of the firing pin sticking out a little bit. I don't know that this is a true striker-fired system, but it's kind of trying to be similar. So, anyway, that idea. And clean out the mag well a little bit. Check the barrel. I'll often use a bore light, one of those little small gooseneck 1 LED lights to check it. But if I don't have that, then I'll also sometimes just use my phone to check it. I'm doing this while the action is open, so it's not really a safety issue to be looking down the barrel. So I can see darn well there's nothing in there that's going to be shooting me in the face. No Elmer Fudd action going on here. And again, these have a divider right about here, so it's not like you can run a bore brush all the way through or a bore snake. So you do what you can, make sure it's safe, and then call it good enough. Now, the two things that were kind of surprises to me on this gig, one, I had this basically brand new unused Eccles Sava Magnum, and this has a slide that kind of looks like it's trying to be a Glock, but it's got an exposed hammer, so it's obviously not a Glock, and the trigger guard and some other things are different, so I don't know if this is trying to be anything particular or not, but this one did not work well. I was disappointed in this. Usually these 9mm by Eccles, they'll be all right. This one was jamming all the time on me, and having some real issues. I never exactly figured out why. But yeah, just something about it not wanting to properly chamber and seat the next round, and then the hammer not cocking back all the way. This one has a decocker. It's a little unusual, but there's a few models that have these, the CZ75 ripoffs, which actually one of those works brilliantly the whole time. So they have this kind of decocker thing, but she'll take it down to a not quite uncocked the whole way. It's double action, so you can still fire it. But one of the things I found was that if you decock it and then fire it, it didn't actually hit hard enough to set it off. So that was not a proper condition for handing it to an actor saying this is hot. It was not. And the hammer didn't go down quite as much as it did if you actually dropped it properly or if it had been fired. But I also found that sometimes after the action had cycled, that it would just not hit hard enough. I'm not sure why. Usually the first shot was fine, the second shot usually didn't. So I don't know if I just got a unfortunate like lemon out of the batch here, or if there's something wrong with this design. But we'll be getting another one of those probably. You know, Lord knows I've got enough other models in stock. I can afford to be a little bit picky and not bother with this one again. Did get a little dirty though. And then one of the other revelations I had, I'd complained before about some of the Zeraki revolvers not working with crimp blanks, and I think what must have happened is I must have just gotten a batch of crimp blanks that stuck up too much. Because when I tried this with the crimp blanks that I had with me this time, it worked just fine. And likewise with the ones that Daryl had brought, it worked just fine with those as well. So, Zeraki, I owe you an apology. Your revolvers apparently work just fine. Yeah, I don't know what my issue was before, but like I said, I had at least one batch where when I tried to put the blanks in it, they stuck out the back enough that the cylinder just wouldn't turn freely. But I was not able to duplicate that problem this last weekend or a week ago at the Allegheny Alley Fight workshop. So I think it must have just been a particularly problematic batch of blanks. Now it's working fine. I did also have a couple of them, including this PPK, which I remembered having some problems with at the Virginia Beach Bash last time I used it also, with light hammer strikes, where it just, there'd be a slight dimple, but it wouldn't go off. And, if I didn't know better from the prop, I'd be worried about it being a hang fire and needing to have everybody freeze and count to 30 and all that. But I also know that this has been a problem with this particular prop before, so I wasn't too worried about it. Sure enough, none of them went off or anything like that. I think what was just happening is, I don't know if it's the spring wearing out or something like that, but just about half the time it just would leave a little dimple and not enough to set the round off. And then half the time it would work. So I'm not sure if these smaller models are any more prone to that, if the smaller spring makes it wear out faster or something. And that's a good question. Yeah, let me know if you've had any observations on that, because I'm honestly not sure. I will say I'm not a huge fan of these anyway that have the little kind of clip style maggers at least on the bottom, just because that's a pain in the butt and not historically accurate to anything post World War II. Granted, this is an old design. Yeah, not my favorite model, and not my favorite prop, thanks to that light hammer strike. But, still sometimes useful for workshops, in part because I want to be able to show what these problems are. I have batches of blanks that I got on sale that I know will create a failure to eject or failure to feed or a stovepipe almost every time. They're just underpowered, I guess. And I always bring them to workshops because I always want to be able to show, hey, this is what it looks like, because it's going to happen. And if I can make it consistently happen when I want it to happen, predictably, then not only can I make sure that I can teach it in a time-efficient manner, but it also it makes me look a little bit better as an instructor when I can predict when it's going to happen instead of just being like, I don't know, they suck, they do this sometimes, who knows, right? Which might be true. But we don't want to undermine confidence in our abilities by having things just be unpredictable and crap in general, right? It's always better we can say, this one's going to jam, bang, see? I do also tell them up front when I'm doing these workshops that I generally don't bring my good stuff to the workshops. I don't need to. I know they're not going to get a film close-up where it matters if it has trademarks. I want my good stuff to go to the higher-paying client that wants something when there's a lot at stake. And at a workshop, something misfires, learning experience, not a whole lot at stake. At least I'm not going to bring something that's a big safety issue, but if in terms of reliability, I'm not too worried about it for workshops. I will say one of the other things that surprised me at this one was not one of mine, but was one of Daryl's Walter P99s, the Emerexes, which generally I find pretty good. But he had one of those that was just not working reliably. I'm not sure if it was the magazine or the prop. I can't remember. We tried switching them around. But there's one of those that was jamming, misfiring, whatever, consistently. We had to pull it out to that final shootout, which made me a little sad because I generally like those. But, is what it is. All right, so that's me rattling on enough. That's me smelling like WD-40 enough. That's me getting most of my props cleaned so I can pack them up. I didn't make you sit and watch all of them. So the next time you're renting some props, or you're wondering kind of, what do I need to do to make sure that I'm doing my due diligence to make sure that these are not going to fall apart on me, or if they do, it's not my fault. This is the main thing. Give them a quick wipe down, spray it through, make sure the vent is clear. That's the huge safety issue. Cycle the action, make sure it doesn't feel gritty or sticky. Wipe it down. Make sure that everything is functioning like it should. Make sure the grips aren't loose and all that other kind of stuff that you'll discover as you are handling them in this capacity when there's not a lot of adrenaline. That's the big thing. Vent lane and just giving it a good once over to make sure it's cool. If you do find that something is starting to rust, like on the magazine or whatever, yeah, then you can sand it down. You might have to re-blue something, things like that. Or if it's rental from me, just a little bit of steel wool, and I'll fix it better when I get it back. Yeah, the main thing is just making sure the vent lane is clear and making sure that the action can cycle smoothly and nothing seems to be going wrong. Sometimes it does, though, so it can be good to have an extra on hand if you're renting props. I know a number of people who have learned from experience to rent extra props and have a backup on hand in case something does go wrong during the run of your show. It's not too unlikely. A buddy of mine was doing Gloria with blanks, and his revolver, apparently his blank was jamming all the time. Wasn't one of mine, but it happens. Blank guns can do that. So we do the best we can. We keep them safe. Try and keep them going as long as we can. Eventually a time will come when you have to put them out to pasture. And this is also something to realize, is that blank guns are not forever. These are not heirlooms you're likely to pass on to your children and your children's children. They're going to wear out. If they actually get used, they'll wear out. They're expendable. You have to retire them periodically. Usually you can just do something like pull the firing pin and call it a non-firing prop from then out. And you can have little prop swaps and things like that, which can be nice. Then you got a dummy gun you can grapple over and whatnot, and then swap out for a firing version when you need to actually make it go bang. But most of these, the time does come when you have to take Bessie out back and say goodbye to her, right? And fire that last shot with it. So that's blank guns. Comes to the territory, and if you're not willing to get your hands a little greasy and clean them out and give them the love that they need, then you're probably not responsible enough to be using them. Or at least make sure that you can delegate to somebody else who is, because it is something that needs to happen. Somebody's got to be doing this pretty much every night if you're using these things, just to make sure that they're safe and they're going to work for you. And they're going to go boom when you need to go boom, and they're going to not go boom when you need them to not go boom. Those are both equally important in what we do. All right. So I think next probably I'll share some of the footage of the shootout from the Allegheny Alley Fight and talk about how that went down, how we planned out some of the events and things. That one will be a little bit more fun. This one was a little bit more doing your homework, eating your veggies. That one will be a little bit more fun. And then hopefully a couple of weeks from now, maybe I'll be able to show you how this musket repair is going and do some test fires of that. Okay? All right. Don't forget, you can always subscribe, like, share, comment, ask questions. Let me know if you got something you're wondering about. Till then, look good, play safe, have fun. This is Kevin Inoue signing off.